before we start the public hearing, I think we'll have Bo come up and give us a heads up of what's going on here.
Mr. Chairman, this is a request that comes to you in three parts. It's a preliminary plat for a subdivision of 36.1 acres in the 7 lots. It's also a request for a land use change from agricultural to residential for 6 of those lots, and from agricultural to commercial for 1 of them. And that may sound a little complicated. It's slightly less so. The Planning Commission considered this matter on February 8th and unanimously recommended approval. There are, in your packet, in your cover memo, you'll notice that there's one condition affecting the land use change of the proposed commercial lot, and there are 15 conditions that were suggested by staff for the preliminary plat. The Planning Commission added a 16th condition to that, so we got a total of 17 for the whole project here. A 16th condition addressing a concern that was mentioned during the Planning Commission's public hearing, that there's an existing drainage issue, concern that it would be aggravated by the proposal. It was generally agreed upon at the Planning Commission meeting that the surface drainage offsite would actually be minimized by this situation. But the proposed 16th condition that is mentioned in your cover memo would further ensure that surface flows, stormwater drainage, getting into the Buffalo Creek Buffalo Creek Road right away, and being conveyed towards the river would be further reduced. I'm getting in a word salad territory, so I'll probably stop at that point. But do you have any questions of staff concerning the staff report, the cover memo, and the plat that you received in your packet? Location of the property, I think we all understand this is located fronting on Buffalo Creek Road, immediately south of the Buffalo Dinosaur Museum property, Dinosaur Center property. Any questions of staff?
Is the only access to the highway on the Buffalo Creek? Is there access to the west?
Only for proposed lot 7, which is the commercial lot. You'll notice on the preliminary plat itself, there's a 60-foot access point leaving the property, going to the property to the southwest, and that is for the purposes of providing ingress and egress to lot 7, which is the proposed veterinary clinic. The very first condition, the condition attached to the recommendation to approve the land use change for that commercial lot, limits the commercial activity specifically to the veterinary clinic. There was some discussion before the Planning Commission about that. They understand, I understand, and the applicants understand that the commercial designation makes sense for that lot in the context of a veterinary clinic, and should that use ever change after that property is designated, that could become problematic. So that very first condition was intended to address that.
And it does show access coming from Highway 20 into Lot 7.
That's correct.
And the other 2 accesses coming from the Buffalo Creek secondary.
That's correct. Lots 1 through 6 then would be, which are the residential lots, would be accessed directly from Buffalo Creek. I will mention also that you all understand that when a final plat comes around for signature in a couple of months, whatever, one of the things that I represent to you is that the final plat that we received is reasonably, substantially compliant with the preliminary that was approved. I expect a proposal of this type to evolve somewhat between the preliminary and the final. One thing that the applicant and I have discussed, that I mentioned before the planning commission, is that theoretically, with internal changes to the lot layouts, that proposed road could evolve into a cul-de-sac, and for that number of residential lots, I don't have a problem with that. YDOT has weighed in on the distance between the two proposed access points, and YDOT does not have a concern with there being too close. In fact, they've indicated that there's some flexibility in there in terms of the distance between those two access points, if the applicant proceeded with this type of a road that has two access points.
The access point of lot 7 is there's a current access there now currently.
Yes, it's off-site, and then that would have to be, the legal status of that would have to be cemented before we're looking at a final plan. Cemented is a bad word, clarified.
The way I understand on that too, well, the lot's already kind of given us a kind of preliminary approval on those access points, right?
Pardon me?
YDOT has already given them kind of a preliminary approval on.
Yes, yes, and I have a letter from YDOT in the file here or an email from them stating that they're agreeable to that layout. Yes.
All three, the two on Buffalo Creek and the one on Irish.
Say again? Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct, all three access points.
Well, before you get away there was some question about the irrigated lands and the water. Was that all resolved?
It is, it's, there's really no question there that this proposal would remove the irrigation water rights from this property. So these lots will not be surface irrigated.
They were ditch irrigated, they pump irrigated to begin with.
Yeah.
It's real marginal production land anyway.
Yeah. I just,
There was a certain degree of concern on my part and on the part of the planning commission that this is irrigated land, because the planning commission the present planning commission feels very strongly in opposition to subdivided irrigated lands, but they saw this property as a very logical candidate for a subdivision. And you mentioned the word, I forgot. It's happening more often.
Marginally.
Thank you, marginal, yeah, one of those words. Yes,
Historically, that property's been marginally productive land.
problematic at best, yes,
Produced a lot of weeds in the past.
exactly.
Exactly.
Any other questions, Mr. Chairman?
I don't have any. Do you have any others? Well, okay. No.
Thank you.
At this time, we will open the public hearing on the proposed Schaefer subdivision, file -2023-01. And if you would like to comment, we ask that you come up to the front and sit down in the chair there so that your testimony can be heard on the recording, and that you identify yourself and who you are, and then go from there. So we'll open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anybody that would like to comment. Okay, come on up.
My name is Kent Shook. I live at 329 Buffalo Creek Road, so directly across from the new subdivision. I'm not very good at public speaking, so this is my wife. She'll sit down with me, I guess. I really do have just three concerns. First of all is the new subdivision, one of the roads is landing right in front of my picture windows. Lights at night, headlights. This is the one that may or may not go away if it turns into a cul-de-sac. But I do have a concern with that and that devaluing my property. Just a minor thing, but yeah, it would do that. The second would be, when the word came out that the land is marginal in terms of agricultural production, we've only been there for 5 years. The first several years, that land was very productive and did well, and it had to do with how hard the person that was farming it farmed it, how much effort they put into it. The last several years, there has not been a tremendous amount of effort put into that land. Things have been done wrong that I know when you plant alfalfa that you can't put horses on it to graze that year. The first year you plant it, they pull the crowns of alfalfa out. That absolutely happened. So, and had tried to replant and find grazing on it the very second year after that. So, I think it could still be reasonable production ground. I know that there would have to be money spent to make it such, and depending on who owns it and whether they're capable of spending the money on it. What was the third?
The trash and dust.
Yeah, we just have a slight, I've grown up, I've worked in, building trades for 25 years and all that. I know what construction sites look like, I know how debris move. We're not the same as Laramie County or northern Colorado, where I've done most of my work. We don't have quite the winds here, but I would just like if a mess is made that somebody makes an attempt to clean it up and pull it out of the fence rows. If we have a lot of dust, I'd like to make sure there's dust mitigation. I know that's part of what goes in there, but I just need to make sure that those things happen.
Okay.
Watershed review, I know that was addressed before,
And
I do wanna make sure that that gets,
the
that
surface water does
sticks.
get taken care of, so
That it
that
really
dump
is.
places were in other people's property, and that should be fairly simple to do with road building and a little bit of burning on the property to keep moving the water held on the property.
I think a lot of our concerns have probably mostly been addressed. I guess the biggest concern is that they get changed after the fact kind of thing. That they're not set in stone, that somebody says, oh yeah, well, we're thinking about doing a cul-de-sac, and so I think, oh great, it won't be spit out in front of our house. But later on it gets changed, that kind of thing, or the trash really isn't picked up and it all goes into our yard, what's our recourse, that kind of thing.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Other comments? Excuse me.
My name's Dick Orman, I live out of Buffalo Creek. I have a terrible concern of the drainage issue. The subdivision alone would be fine, but he has two 24-inch pipes that drain into the borrow pit, which goes down to my house and comes across through my land with absolutely no permission whatsoever. There's never been anything done since that's happened. It hadn't been a problem until those two 24-inch pipes flow water. It's their rainwater, storm drain type stuff. So what's basically happening is I'm getting all the flow from this subdivision, plus the dinosaur center through my property, destroying the hell out of it. It's erosion. There's times I can't even get out in my field because it's soaked. And I really would like to see something done with this. I tried to work through the highway department here. I worked through the highway department in Casey. And I got absolutely no result whatsoever.
So the 24-inch pipes are currently there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they're buried across their egress. So, and they just before it gets into highway property, they opened all that up and then the ditch went. Beforehand, back 30, 40 years ago, there was an overflow pipe up by where Titmus lives now, an 8-inch pipe, that if the borrow pit at the time got too full, that would run through. But I've never had drainage through there till this happened. You know, so what am I supposed to do?
Okay, well, I'm just trying to picture, is this is an ongoing problem before they've ever built a subdivision?
That's correct.
So,
But I didn't, with the subdivision, there's gonna be the issue there, and talk about farming. That field was, when Brett Jones farmed that, he'd get 3 cuttings a year of it, of good alfalfa. When Brett left, they hired some old guy there, and he poisoned the whole damn thing, which in turn ran on my property, which took my pasture, he called it crops, and killed it for a year. So now I'm looking at chemical pollution to boot. Now when the rest of it comes up, say the dinosaur center, I'm gonna have oil, gas, trash, everything else running through my property with absolutely no permission whatsoever. There's no easements, there's no anything.
okay,
So that's my major concern. You know, let's help me get this cleaned up. I wanna have use of my property. I can't, like, I wanna build a garage out in front of my house, I can't do it. 'Cause all of a sudden I got, you know, water running all over the damn place. A couple of years ago, they irrigated, I couldn't get in my field for 2 weeks. Because it's saturated.
so, my concern, Vic, is, I'm not mitigating your, you know, or not lessening your, concern, is that I'm not sure that the change of use for this will make your problem worse or better. You know, it actually should improve it a little if they don't irrigate it hard.
The big word is if.
Well, they're not gonna irrigate it because they're gonna have houses out there, so.
But how many of them are gonna drill a well to irrigate your 3 or 4 acres?
Well,
You see what I'm trying to?
I do, but
You know.
I just, it's not going to be a, full-on irrigation, I mean, in that sense, but I'm not sure that, that problem, your problem, and the problem on property, really impacts this discussion on the subdivision. You know, I don't disagree that the problem needs to be addressed, and I don't know who should, you know, it looks like YDOT, they're the ones that are they put the 24-inch pipes in.
No, they didn't.
Didn't they?
They did not.
So who drains the water? It runs under the road?
It runs it where you're familiar with Buffalo Creek?
A little bit,
When you first go in, there's a house that sits right on the road,
yeah.
and that's one of their egresses, their highway spot. It goes under that,
I see.
just to the ditch.
So then it comes down and then runs under the road?
Yeah.
I see.
And I also wanna add that maybe a quarter mile from where this is all happening, there is an approved EPA drainage place where they have a pond, a settling pond, to catch the oil and everything else. That's there. That's been there for around how many years? And it was in use until they did what they did.
What would it take to put that back into use?
It should be already. Right now, with the amount of water coming through there, their end regress or egress where your, I believe vet clinic is, that's only a 3-foot pipe. They've got 2 2-foot pipes feeding this, plus whatever else comes in. So it's gonna back up there, so that pipe would have to be replaced. There might have to be a little dirt work, so you get it back to where it needs to be.
So, you know, I I just think we still need to talk about this subdivision. You know, I'm not sure that
This is part of the subdivision.
I understand, but my point is, I'm not sure that the subdivision is not going to help the problem, but I don't disagree that the problem is there. It's just, you know, what we're gonna talk about today is whether we approve the subdivision or not.
Oh,
And,
as far as the approval, you know, their lot size and whatever, I think it's great. Whoever drew it up did a pretty fair job,
yeah.
you know. That's-
But the other problem of the drainage and some of those things, is like the house that creates one of those, lets the water run on down the pipe. I mean, that's been there since Harry Snyder built that house, I believe, but, not positive, but I think we're talking about two separate problems, and I think
Okay.
not saying your problem is not and shouldn't be addressed, and maybe we should figure out some way to address it and for that, but I don't think that in the public hearing of the subdivision, you know, I don't know that that's gonna change what the problem is currently. It's not gonna make it worse, not gonna make it better, it might make it better because you're not gonna have the water. But not to put you off, but I think it's something we should be talking about and figuring
Well,
out.
yeah, considering they're the ones in the subdivision that the pipe is coming out of,
You know,
and it is going across their land, so who's responsible?
well, in one of the conditions is that they build their roads to try to alleviate some of that, issue, so, I mean, maybe that'll be enough that will take care of itself as they get done. Anyway.
Don't see it.
Okay.
I'm having that issue already, and the land was farmland, so it was able to do whatever water it needed. And sure, I'm sure there was a small amount of runoff from it, I mean, there's no doubt. The big issue is the two-foot pipes on his property that's draining.
Okay.
See, I had no recourse to this whatsoever that I know of, you know, so. Anyway, I appreciate you guys' time,
Okay,
and I appreciate anything you can do for me,
all right, thanks, Gary.
because the only other option I know that I have is block the pipe off from my land. And if I do that, that's gonna flood. So,
Yeah.
it's a mess. Gentlemen, thank you, appreciate your time.
Yeah, Chairman, I was, wondering if a conversation with the highway department would be historically address those
Yes,
issues.
yes, I do, I think the issue needs to.
But I agree, it's not the right, subdivision probably will make it better, but.
Yeah.
Okay, other public comment?
It's all right, thanks.
For a second time, I'll ask for public comment. And a third time for public comment. Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing. And we have some additional discussion from the commissioners, or are we just ready to work on the checklist? Have other questions to the proposed subdivision owners or to staff? Bo, you wanna comment on Vic's deal any?
I just mentioned to Vic that, come see me and let's see if we can, collectively work together and lean on YDOT and find out what the problem is and see
What the
what we can
solutions
get
might
resolved.
be? Okay, alright, thank you. Okay, well, not, then let's work through the, checklist.
explain to me again the irrigation rights. So obviously it was ditch irrigated out of the pipe and pump in the river. Did you revert all of that irrigation right back and it's just gonna stay in the river? It's returned, or is it, you can't transfer the water rights off of the land, and I mean it stays with the land? What happened to the irrigation rights?
Who's gonna jump in first?
They go back to I think they go back, Phil, to my land, cause I have some that has, I have a whole lot of irrigated property there, and I'm not using all of that. So, Kurt has told the engineers that that's going back to my land. If it don't get used, it go down the river anyway.
Right, okay. So pretty much you're abandoning the irrigation rights
That's
on
correct.
that part of the field, okay?
Don't teach that in law school.
Chairman, my question about if we're gonna proceed through the relative checklist policy immediately, is based on the fact that, the absolute checklist policies, I found absolutely no deficiencies, all A1 through A36, I found complied, so then I moved to the relative checklist policy and came with a total of a positive 4, and so, relative checklist policies complied with a score of positive 4 for me.
I also, cannot find any disagreements with the absolute policy checklist. The relative policy checklist, actually I got a +5.
Okay. And I didn't have any absolute, checklists, and I actually had a score of +12.
So, Mr. Chairman, after completing the checklist as is our normal procedure, I move to approve the Schaefer subdivision file 2023-01, the preliminary subdivision plat, the land use change for lots 1 through 6 from agricultural to residential, and the land use change in lot 7 from agricultural to commercial.
And the conditions.
Including the 16 conditions included in the staff report.
Okay.
There's two number ones.
2 number ones. Yes, there's 17 of them.
Okay,
I second that.
okay, a motion is second, is there any more discussion?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I've been beat up for saying this, but I sure appreciate the applicants going through the process before they're building anything or doing, making any changes.
I agree. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet, thanks, Dave.
but you would know.
No guarantee, no guarantees or conditions. There is nothing imposed upon people doing subdivisions. Nothing. There was more done than you do.
She's not really doing it anymore.
There was more concern, more interest in these guys. I think Paul has a guy to the satellite. This guy needs to go. Is that next year?
Yeah, they used to in basketball. She goes archery and she's got her gigs. I don't know.
Okay. And three.
Yeah.
I'll go through my notes and see if there has been any. But
My
come
next.
on,
You're next.
Cool, well, I'm here to talk about land use. Breath of fresh air with economic development. So, I will preface the conversation by saying that I am not in this to get a job. So I am merely the conduit. I don't need to be the economic development director. That's not what I'm getting at. And I just want that to be very clear up front. So basically, in your packets, Connie has provided you with this flyer. But for the benefit of everybody else, I'll kind of go through what that meeting will entail. So on Tuesday, April 18th, we're going to be getting a big group of folks together to just have a conversation about economic development. Both about projects that are going on now, just to get everyone on the same page, but also things that we kind of see that could be coming down the road. And then also to talk about what we are doing now for economic development, which is not a lot, and what we could be doing, what people have ideas for, because I think that we need to be doing more than what we are now. As you can see from the list there, we're doing, obviously the county commissioners are invited, but also the towns of Thermopolis, Kirby, and East Thermopolis, their mayors and their town councils, the Hot Springs State Park interim superintendent is invited, as well as the Chamber of Commerce board and director, the Main Street Thermopolis board, the Thermopolis Investment Company board, the defunct Thermopolis EDC board, and also the Wyoming Business Council regional director, Kristen Fong. So it'll be a rather large group of people, mostly just to get everyone on the same page about what's happening now and what we see as the future, and then to figure out from there what the next steps are. So I don't think we're coming into it with a specific agenda, it's just the starting of a conversation. And whether that continues into the future or not will be decided at that meeting.
And who's putting, who's?
I am.
Okay.
I feel like it should probably come from like an EDC board or something, but we don't really have anyone that's doing that right now. So I am doing it working with Marianne at the chamber.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I just, you know, it's nice to know what.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not the EDC director, nor do I want that job. So
Okay.
I don't see myself continuing in that role for long, but hopefully we can figure out where we're headed, and I can just be the conduit to help facilitate the conversation and get them started in the right direction. And then, you know, obviously I'm going to help out as the conversation unfolds, but that's one of the reasons that I'm saying upfront that I don't want to do this long term.
Is the Thermopolis Economic Development Company still in existence?
Technically, no. They let their registry with the state secretary of state. I think they last filed in like 2021. They do still have access to some funds, although I'm not sure what the status of that is at this point. So several of their board members have been contacted to come to this meeting, so I'm just hoping that maybe they can give us an update there. I'm not sure. But at this point, no, they're not operating.
Okay. Do you have a some thought, or you just as?
I kind of think we should start over with something else, just because, as you know, sometimes in Thermopolis, people will get an association with a certain name, and I think EDC was both positive associations and negative associations in the county, so you're going to be pulling that luggage around with you no matter where you go with it. it if you retain that name and that charter. So I think forming something else would be better, but that's, I might change my mind
Okay,
during that meeting, I'm not sure. But at this point, they're not operating, so I think heading a different direction might be easier than trying to resurrect the dead, as they might say.
well, I don't disagree, they maybe ran their course, did a lot of good for a while, and then not so much, so. Anyway, okay,
This is primarily just an invitation to the meeting.
Right, at this point, it's a one-time thing. It's gonna be a rather cumbersome group of folks, so 30 to 40, depending on how much response we get. So I think that's gonna be too large of a convening to do regularly. Maybe an annual meeting would be okay with that large of a group, but if it's gonna be any kind of regular occurrence, I think we'll have to pare that down. Marianne and I have had conversations about paring that down by having only one representative from each entity and asking either the president or the president's representative to serve in that capacity. But, who's to say that it's even gonna go further than just one meeting, so that'll be up to you all to decide when you come together.
well, I think it's good to ask the questions, just like having the business council regional director there, if you don't have some organization that's actually working on economic development, it's sort of, it's just like things like county, if you don't have somebody that's actually doing that, it's just super hard to get it revved up, now some counties have the ability to have more staff, but, we're sort of a bare bones organization here, and so there isn't like somebody to say, hey, you head that up, and I think, thank you for asking, so we'll see where it goes.
I really think the primary load of this work has been passed off onto the chamber. And the chamber director is probably fielding way more of these economic development questions than we probably even realize. And I think the chamber is doing a good job in our community.
Do you think that the chamber would be the people to stand up that organization, or do they have a desire to do that?
I think
I'll
that
be
there's,
meeting with their board on Thursday, so they've not even had that conversation yet.
I think, maybe, yeah, we'll have to see. So,
They have,
they have presence, they have the desire to be the hub of communication, they have been.
and they have a dog in the fight,
Absolutely.
So maybe it'd be that you would, some deal is, we pay a little more or something to
Supports that capacity.
We used to pay for the, economic development, EDC, the commissioners, when I first became commissioner, gave them, funding.
Substantial amount of money, if I believe.
I can't remember. Yeah, it was a chunk of change, and some of their, policies got to be, in how much involvement you could have and what notice you could sort of give me a bad feeling, but I don't disagree, and I think somebody needs to be spearheading that, sending people to places where they have, telling people what good things go on here.
With this whole list of stakeholders here, there are things happening among those groups that probably those other groups don't even understand what's going on. So, just having a clearinghouse for that information, I think, would be beneficial to the entire community.
Well, and all those different groups, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. If you're already in a process, maybe we could work together collaboratively to get it done, so thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And
Do you guys have further questions for me?
nope, I'm gonna RSVP right now.
You're all coming?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I don't know what Phil,
I don't know.
can't tell you.
Connie, you're welcome to come as well if you would like to, just let me know so I know how many lunches to prepare. We're excited to get started. I don't know where the conversation will lead. I think you guys are having, just right here, having similar conversations to what Marianne and I've had in the past. I will tell you up front that I don't think that Mary Ann, she's pretty much at capacity at this point. So without further staff or without some other help, she's not gonna be able to do very much more than she already is. And you're right, that she is already taking this role on for the community because she doesn't feel like it should just be left undone. So if somebody calls and needs help with a business plan, Mary Ann provides that help, but I think that's part of her desire to have someone else
So then
lead this initiative is
by
to get
getting
some
some
help.
money from all those different entities, you might be able to hire another person or up a little bit, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for starting the discussion.
I'll see you guys in a month or so.
All right,
Thank you.
Item 11, scheduled public comment discussion. Commissioner item, Commissioner Galloway had asked that public comment discussion be put on. I think it's a great discussion item. I have some, I have some concerns of just having public comment in the sense that, the way I view the commissioner meeting is it is to do the county's business. So, there's all kinds of worthy, things out there that you would like to bring, light to. But myself, and I think everybody will have some discussion here, myself is, there's only certain things that the commissioners control. And as being the chairman, one thing is, I do not like to bring items to this agenda if the commissioners don't have purview over it. So, there's a lot of really good things going on. There might be bad things going on, but, to bring them and just allow public comment doesn't, it isn't our, we don't have any say in it. So when you listen to something and, it has a great thing, but we don't have anything to act on. And I don't think that should be allowed. We don't bring agenda items that are,
Like a town council issue is, chickens in town, that really doesn't have much to do with.
it's a great discussion, but or somebody comes and wants to complain about another government entity. Geez, the town, the streets, they're falling apart in case, winter's been kind of brutal. But
It doesn't have a nexus with our ability to make any.
right, I don't think there should be things, and we also are a commission that does not, is not opposed to having public comment. Our meetings are fairly relaxed in normal government meetings, and, if there's an item on the agenda that somebody wants to comment on, we do not exclude that. We don't say, no, you can't talk. But I just am really leery of just allowing public comment. The other issue you run into is if you have somebody that wants to complain about staff, and then all at once you're into should be in an executive session.
Personnel issue.
All the way in, and the other is all three of the commissioners here are accessible. So if somebody has a concern for us, that they say, man, I need this issue, and they reach out to one of us, and you say, yeah, that's a great issue, I'll get it on the agenda to talk about it, if it is, but if you don't have that heads up, then our staff doesn't have the time to prepare pros and cons, you know, every single issue has, you know, everybody sees things a little different. You know, your opinion, my opinion, the right opinion, I mean, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying, is, and if you don't give your staff time to develop things, you could make a decision and not have all the, you know, all the correct pieces. You get done and, you know, Road and Bridge says, geez, you should have called us. We weighed in on that topic a lot, you know, and you're like, oh, maybe I should have asked more than one opinion, you know. And so I am not in favor of having just a public, I don't wanna say bitch fest, but a public comment period, just because I feel like this meeting, the time is valuable, our time is valuable, and I just don't want to bring things here that we don't have a say in. And you know, the problem yeah, I'll let you talk for a minute. The problem is, you know, somebody gets up and you're not prepared for what they have to say, and they say something, accurate or not accurate, and it gets reported in the papers because that's what they said. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that that was accurate. And, you know, maybe if you had time to prepare and tell people that were on either side of the issue, they had the opportunity to come and talk as well. I just think you would have a better product.
You know, I don't disagree with you, Sharon. I just, you know, just think like today, for example. Today is a day full of business.
Yes.
And me as a new chairman is very difficult because I'm not used to, you know, all the grants and all the equations to the grants and the contribution that we pay and all those things. And so it's an educational process for me every time I get a packet. I'm in it for hours trying to understand everything I need to understand before I come to a meeting. Yeah. And so, like the first meeting of the month, I can understand where
You can also call me.
it's all business. I mean,
You know what I'm
you're,
saying? You can call me if you have questions ahead of time.
Oh, thank you. But, you know, I try to do my own due diligence and try to research that and try to understand that. And so I can understand the business nature of what we do. And there's no question about that. I don't disagree with you. I understand that completely. We know we have that business. I'm thinking more in the area of maybe an allocated time on the second Tuesday of the month where maybe it's just, and it's not necessarily about pertaining to a particular issue. Maybe it's just a general overall concern. Not that we have to make a decision upon comments, but just to hear what somebody's concerns may be. And we can take notes or learn from that, and maybe it could help to give us a direction to move towards, or to encourage somebody to put it on an agenda for a formal discussion. That's kind of more what I was thinking is to where, you know, we have public meetings, we want to encourage public participation, and I don't want to necessarily feel like the citizens are stymied from being able to voice an opinion. Mm-hmm. And I would agree. I think in decisions that come before us and that are particular, like today, for example, if you had a comment on everything we tried to go over, it's going to be pretty impossible for somebody to understand in depth. It's difficult for me to understand in depth after studying it for hours. Mm-hmm. It's going to be difficult for somebody to understand the depth of all that we're doing when we talk about TAP grants and everything else. So I can understand the fact that not necessarily inviting much public comment for those things, but to have a portion of our schedule, like I'm thinking the second Tuesday that we have, in which somebody just can not necessarily stand up and vent, but maybe they have suggestions that would come before us as county commissioners that would help us to, in our thoughts and our plans and our operations of upcoming months that could be advantageous. There's always benefits in my mind that come from public participation.
I don't disagree, but I still you know, and the county's a little different than other government entities in that we don't have, I mean, the people that sat here today and talked to us is the extent in the county that we oversee. You know, all those people here are people that report directly to us. But the county has a unique deal in that the main things the county does, the clerk, the treasurer, the assessor, the attorney, all those, the coroner, us, what's the, district clerk. So
And
all those, and sheriff, all those people that are in that mix, their accountability, it's not like the police chief who works for the council. So the community, the way they get accountability to those people is that every 4 years they either elect them or don't. So if you have a really big problem with one of those departments, for one, you should take it up with them because they have the same authority that we do. And I would be, you know, it's not in our place to listen to gripes about the assessor, the treasurer, the clerk.
No, I understand that.
And so I just don't see how you can control that by just having an open public comment.
Well, one of my thoughts too is, you know, kind of limit it to 3 minutes or something, so it's not just a totally dominating conversation. What I'm thinking is more like what pertains to a person individually. Like you know, I've gone through, here recently, the land use plans, 2002, 2020, and 2022, just to review the changes. And it's complicated. I mean, it's deeply complicated. I'm going through all those to compare the changes, but actually there's some verbiages in the 2022 plan that if you went and dug in a propane line on your property, just about requires a land use change, disturb the surface of the ground. And so let's say that somebody is wanting to do something like that project, or they've got a complaint that they've got in relationship to their land use, their private property, but they don't have any place to voice that, which really is in our control. When you talk about land use in the county.
It is, but we have, if it's something on yours, the first thing you do is go talk to the planner.
Right.
Cause he's super voiced in the.
But if they did receive, you know.
So then if they didn't like the response or, some other thing, then that would become an agenda item. And you would
Put it on
an
an agenda.
agenda, and you would give our planner the opportunity to come and talk. You know, because the last thing we wanna do is have somebody come and talk to us and we go, oh, that's stupid, we don't like that. Well, you need to understand the planner's point and how he's viewing the plan. So I just am concerned about cutting out the people that we pay to do those jobs. And, anyway, you know, and we don't have to completely agree.
No, I know.
Mr. Chairman, my ideas of having a public comment period, if it's in the public meeting, is we're providing a stage for all kinds of things, good, bad, or otherwise. If we genuinely are listening to people that have a problem with a nexus of something that we have control, power to authority over, and it provides a good thing, or it could provide a bad thing. We talked about personnel issues, that needs to be handled in executive session. There's other things that are specifically permitted only in executive session. We don't want somebody coming up and complaining, talking about potential litigation, because that's one of those things that's required to happen in executive session. There's such a wide berth of the things that the county commissioners deal with. Providing a stage for someone to grandstand about something. And if we could build some kind of framework or rules about, sure, we have public meeting for the first 15 minutes of every Tuesday, second meeting, but here's the things that are off limits. That would become, I think, horribly unwieldy
pressed down about, well, that's against the rules, you can't talk about that in public meeting. So I'm gonna suggest that we don't go, I'm not in favor of having just open public, comment. I think that the commissioners are extremely accessible. I visit with probably 10 people between meetings that call me, come to my shop, and ask me personally about things that the commissioners deal with. My phone number is available on the county website, it's available on other websites, and my email address, it's not a secret. We have county emails, we're all pretty public figures, you know, people can find me. If they've got questions, I am more than happy to talk with them individually, outside of a public meeting where I could be changing anything. They can bring their concerns to me, and just like Tom said, if it's something that I think is super important, I'll talk with the rest of you guys, and we'll talk, and maybe this is something that we should bring up on an agenda item. I think we are accessible. I think people should be encouraged to be part of the public process by visiting with us elected officials. And, you know, just, we're the county commissioners. We're just elected like everybody else. People, if they don't like what we're doing, have an opportunity to elect us or not. And just because we're county commissioners doesn't mean we're the highest office of the county. We're just, we manage a few things
in the county. Okay, you had a comment?
I do.
Okay.
My name is Hubert McAllister. There's several things that I'd like to, first of all, I have to ask every one of you individuals that are sitting here, who do you work for?
We work for Hot Springs County.
That's the taxpayers, correct?
It is.
Okay. To shut us out is improper.
We're not.
Because, no, you just said you are shutting us out because you don't want it in a public forum. There's things that we talk about, that are talked about here that need to be discussed in a public forum setting. We're asking for 10 minutes, that's all. We're not, if you have somebody that's grandstanding, just tell them it's not germane to the topic. You have recourse. Robert's Rules of Orders are there for a reason, okay? It's just like when you go into executive session for a real estate purchase, that's taxpayers' dollars. We need to be made aware that you're going into executive order to purchase property. I think that is the public, that should be something that goes to before the public, not in an executive session. Personnel issues, absolutely. Those are between you and an employee. But when you're purchasing property or you're doing something large enough, you don't just put it in public notices. It should be in a public forum in the newspaper saying, hey, we're gonna spend some money up here on the old airport. Anybody that's interested, it shouldn't be in public notices, let's hide it here. That's why I come to these meetings, because I felt deceived by you individuals.
Did you?
I did feel individual.
We had a public hearing on that.
And guess where it was? You didn't see it in the paper. I didn't see it in the paper.
Was advertised for the.
In public notices.
Okay.
Even Jackie Dorothy said that herself. In a public meeting over at the town hall, she says, oh yeah, well, we put it in public notices.
Which is where you're supposed to.
Okay, well, I understand. But something that significant should come before the taxpayers, and something other than public notices should be in the paper and say, this should be on the record. You know, let's find out who is it. You'd get a lot more people here that'd be interested in what you're doing. As far as accessibility, I don't feel comfortable talking one-on-one with Phil. I don't feel comfortable talking one-on-one with you. Okay, so that's why I'm here in a public forum, and that's why I'm discussing, we're asking for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, if it's not germane to the topic, then shut it down. Say, I'm sorry, you're not germane to the topic, you're inciting a problem. Okay, I'm not trying to incite a problem here. I'm just trying to discuss with you why I think we need to have a public forum with the taxpayers. The people that are flipping the bills for everything that goes on in this county.
Okay.
We need to have the taxpayers need to be able to, 10 minutes, that's all we're asking for. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, may I make a couple more?
Yep.
Oh, I'll just, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to brief this for you. One thing I would say initially is that you're not required, as far as I can see, to do that, to allow that. We're not mandated to have a public comment section. But that doesn't mean that you can't have one either if you choose to do so. And, one thing that the public might not understand too is that if it's just kind of an open public comment, it's not an action item. And so that, I'll brief that in a little more detail and try to explain it a little better, but you wouldn't be able to take any action on anything that's brought forward in that setting. Which is why we have an agenda, which is why we're fairly liberal on what we allow on the agenda, so that it is actionable. So, if you would like, I can brief it for you and shoot y'all an email and
Please.
revisit it, or whatever you would like me to
I mean, if you do that, and then Connie, you did some work on, what other counties do.
Yes.
I just saw that sheet.
And I did too quickly. I didn't give them much time to respond to me, but some counties do, some counties don't.
Yes.
And I just barely kind of got into why, and so it would kind of help me, as far as like time management and things like that, like what there is to gain by doing that. And so if there is anything that you wanna share with me that I'm not hearing today, that would be helpful too.
Okay.
And the
That is-
statutes,
that is-
there are statutes that are, regulate our,
What, on
public
meeting?
meetings, yes.
Okay, if you do that, that'd be great,
I'm happy to.
okay?
Yeah, I guess, Sharon, my thoughts are is that, the whole foundation, and granted, we're not founding a government here, but the foundation of our government was based on debate, actually, largely. Our founding forefathers didn't always agree on things, they had large disagreements. And so the public format of being able to have discussion actually is an educational process, in my mind anyway. It can be educational for us, it can be educational for those who are there. So if someone stands up and has a comment about something, we can at least share with them our knowledge and experience. And sometimes those discussions are best held in a public format, rather than just an individual conversation with me or with you or with Phil.
I don't disagree, and that's what we're doing here, so.
Right, yeah.
Anyway.
I appreciate that too, Madam. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right, any comments?
I kind of, it's up to the chairman's discretion to acknowledge people that have questions. So today, Nate Messenger's report about what's going on at the airport, during Nate's presentation to us, if someone had a question about Nate's report and the chair recognizes them in our regular meeting because Nate's report is on the agenda, then I think it would be completely appropriate if the chairman recognizes them that they could ask a question. So those items, we're not excluding all the things that are on the printed agenda
For people commenting.
for people asking questions. Hey, what does TAP mean in a TAP grant? That is completely appropriate in my mind. Things that are on the agenda, if people have questions about them.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, if you get us a thing, we'll have some more discussion about it. So, all right. Item 9 on the other business, I think is where we're at.
Yes.
Discussion of possible action regarding the BLM problematic environmental impact statement cooperative MOU. So this has come forward. What I was able to read, we just got this, and I assume this has to do with solar powered on federal lands, and it's just asking if we want to be a cooperating agency is the way it's what I got. And I told Connie, put it on the agenda that, what was the deadline?
March 10th, we have to respond,
Well,
and then we will give you the guidance.
Then the MOU would be put on. And I said, obviously, we want to at least be a cooperating agency.
Right.
I mean, even if we don't participate,
Right.
we at least want to be able to have our voice heard. So I just think that we want to have a motion to send the BLM notice that we want to be a
So,
Since that's your.
Yeah,
well, actually,
I move that we send a notice to the BLM that we'd like to be a cooperating agency. In regards to these issues, I guess it's dated February 24th, 2023, in correspondence from the United States Department of Interior.
second.
We have this motion and second, you know, as we progress, we get a little time, we'll call Mike and talk to him about, you know, the thing we just did to make the, WCCA overall. So he basically represents us all and ask him if this is included in that.
I'm kind of guessing it's not, but
I
that
agree.
is specifically with sage grouse,
Yeah,
and this is solar sighting.
yeah, I don't know what that would look like, but I bet those are throwing.
I'm still anxious to be able to meet some of these folks, so I haven't had a chance to meet yet.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Anyway, okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So if you get a letter put together to say that, and then I'll put my signature on it. Okay, correspondence. Talk to Link with the snow melt forecast. New fish, library agenda.
So nice that Rocky Mountain Power is increasing their rates.
Yeah.
That's nice to be a regulated utility.
Hefty increase too.
It's extremely hefty.
That's something that I've never seen, that's, wow. I'm not on Rocky Mountain, but that's good.
Part of the line is.
Yes. Anyways, so, at 11:25, it says we have an executive session to discuss personnel.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session to discuss personnel.
Second that.